Hi there, welcome to our kitchen. Today we're going to be making chicken katsu curry. I'm also going to be doing a tofu katsu curry for Sam. And we'll go through kind of all of the other toppings you can put with it in a minute. But to start with, chicken katsu curry. One of my favourite meals. Definitely the only thing I eat at Wagamama's. You're pitter-pattering again. So katsu curry, as I said, can have loads of different toppings. My favourite is chicken, and we normally do a tofu for Sam. So other toppings you can have. Pork is a very popular topping in Japan. It is referred to as like a tonkatsu curry. The chicken one is called a tori katsu curry. Then there's also yasai, which is vegetable. Normally it is sweet potato or aubergine. There's also a vegan version which you can make with seitan, which is like a wheat product. I don't really know a lot about it because we're not vegan, we don't eat vegan. Another popular one is called ebi fry, which is little fried prawns. A katsu curry is basically just rice or noodles, kind of whatever you want to serve it with, a curry sauce, which most people would refer to as a katsu curry, and then a breaded whatever. As I said, we're going with chicken and tofu today. So to start the katsu, we're going to actually start by paneing or breading our products today, both the chicken and the tofu. So the first step is to slice up the tofu or chicken or whatever you're using. Make sure it's decently thin because we're going to be pan frying it later. I butterflied my chicken and I cut a little bit extra off. That's for the dog for his tea because he is a spoiled baby. Then we're going to set up a pané station or breading station, whatever you'd rather call it. So we're going to start by putting about 50 grams of plain flour into a Tupperware or a bowl, whatever you're going to pané with, adding a little bit of salt and ground black pepper. Then we're going to add some panko breadcrumbs into another Tupperware or bowl, mixing a little bit of cracked black pepper and just mix it all the way through. Next we'll whisk up 2 eggs with about a teaspoon of mirin just to give it that kind of enhanced flavour. Then we can begin panéing by dredging our product through the flour first, then into the egg mix, making sure to fully coat it with the egg mix. If you feel like the breadcrumb isn't going to stick enough, you can redo that. So you can go back to the flour, then back through to the egg to give it a kind of a thicker breaded layer. And then we're going to dredge it through our panko right at the end. When you've done this to everything that you're using, put it back in the fridge. You want to chill it for at least an hour before you cook it. You chill it so that when you go to fry it, the breadcrumbs don't fall off and kind of mess up your pan. To make the whole process of cooking this a little bit easier, you can prep your veg ahead of time, such as I did. So I quickly sliced up an onion, pretty rough, doesn't need to be perfect. Crushed up, I think, 4 garlic cloves. You'd normally use 5, but the garlic cloves we had today were pretty big. And then just again sliced up 2 carrots, and then eventually they'll all go in the curry. When prepping, I also mixed together 2 tablespoons of plain flour and a tablespoon and a half of curry powder. I use medium, you can use hot or mild, whichever your preference. So once we have everything panéed and it's chilled for a while, we're going to start by heating up the oven. Obviously, we're going to be doing that. Put it onto about 180, and I'm going to set up a warming oven for the tofu because if you cook it for too long, it will just go rubbery and horrible, so we don't want to be doing that. So once your oven's started to preheat, we're actually going to heat up quite a bit of oil in the pan. I don't really have an amount for this, it's just quite a lot. You just want to make sure that there's a decent coating on the bottom of the pan. Again, I'm using my skillet because it has a much better heat distribution. And we're going to get that quite hot quite fast and then drop the temperature. My pan is really hot, so I need to start frying the tofu and the chicken. And I need to get that from the fridge. When your oil is nice and hot, we're going to start by shallow frying the tofu, leaving it on there probably 3-4 minutes aside, just getting it to like a light golden brown colour. And then when the tofu is out, I'm going to be doing the same with my chicken. When they're both finished frying, I'm going to be putting them into the preheated oven. So now that the tofu and the chicken are both fried, I'm going to put them in the oven. I'm only going to put the tofu in the oven for about 15 minutes, then move it up to a warming oven. I'll keep the chicken in the oven until everything else is ready, just to make sure it's fully cooked. His crying distracted me. Hot oven. Right. So we've washed the rice. That's also sometimes called sharpening, when you kind of push through it using kind of slightly warm but not hot water to get rid of the excess starch. We'll do that again later before it goes in the rice cooker. So we're actually going to start cooking the curry sauce now that that's in the oven. We've washed the rice once. So first step we're going to do is heat up about a tablespoon of oil, and I'm going to be using sesame oil today. If you don't like it or allergic or anything like that, just use kind of sunflower oil, vegetable oil, something kind of fairly plain. I use that because I think it's a very nice base for the curry. Then add your chopped onion and bruised garlic and stir, making sure that they're thoroughly coated in oil, and leave that to start softening and browning for about 2 minutes. Next we'll add our carrot, once again coating it in the oil in the pan, and then we'll put the lid on and leave it to sweat for about 10 minutes. You can tell that your veg has started to sweat because the onions will be lightly brown and soft, and the garlic will be very fragrant. When all the veg in the pan is browned, we're going to add the flour and curry mix. On a low heat, we want to stir that for about a minute, making sure to drag any that's clumping to the bottom. What?
Just that seagull really loud.
Then we're going to be adding our stock bit by bit and stirring constantly to avoid the curry and flour forming lumps. So when all the stock has gone into the mix, we're going to be adding a tablespoon of soy sauce, 2 teaspoons of honey, a bay leaf. I also add sashimi togarashi, which is a Japanese 7 spice. I just think that that gives it kind of an extra spicy kick, and I really like it. Plus we have it and we like to use it. If you're going to be using the 7 spice, make sure you don't add a lot because it is really hot. I added like a tiny pinch to mine. When everything's in your pot, put it to about a medium heat, put the lid on, let it bubble up, and then once it's up to a nice simmer, drop it back down to like a lower simmer, and we're going to leave that for about 20 minutes. So once you've got everything going for your curry sauce, we're going to rinse the rice again and start the cooking process for the rice. Once you've washed your rice again and put it into the rice cooker or pan, however you're going to be cooking it, cover it with cold water, and you want to make sure that you've kind of got a ratio of about 2 to 1 for water to rice. You can test it by measuring your thumbnail against the top of the rice, and if it hits the top of your thumbnail, it should be enough water. You then want to soak it in the same water for about 2-3 minutes, and then you can start cooking it. Depending on what rice you're using, it could take less or more time to cook. Obviously, try to follow the packing instructions. We don't actually have instructions for our glutinous rice, so we're just kind of doing it roughly according to the way we normally cook rice. I'm not sure about other rice cookers, I'm pretty sure they all work roughly the same, but ours has a kind of weight sensor, and that's how it defines it. So once it's kind of cooked off a lot of the water and a lot of that's left, then it will tick off and we know our rice is ready. As you've seen, I've also covered the lid for our rice cooker, especially because with glutinous rice, it releases so much of the kind of starch that it just spits all over our worktops and it annoys us, and it just kind of helps lock in the extra moisture so that the rice is kind of nice and fluffy when it's done. While that's going, we're going to move the tofu from the bottom oven into my warming oven, so I'm going to do that now quickly. I'm sorry, I'm just thinking about curry. That's a sentence I've said several times.
I'm just thinking about curry. You often wake up like saying that.
I'm just thinking about curry. I love curry!
Think about curry all the time.
It's my favourite food style, I guess. So I don't really have a favourite food. If you can hear Alfie crying, he's in doggy prison right now because he was being a baby. So he's just locked away in the lounge instead right now. So you can probably hear him crying in the background, to repeat myself. But we're going to talk about other sides that you can put with this very quickly. You don't have to have rice with it. We just like rice, and we have like 2 kilos of sushi rice at the minute, because we quite often have sushi rice with something like this. You can have noodles, they're very common. Pretty much any kind of noodle. If we have noodles with it, we tend to go for udon, like the thicker noodle. I don't know why, we just do. Meh. In terms of other sides, you can have a salad, if that's your preference. Pickled veg is quite common, such as kimchi, although that's not actually Japanese. You could also have miso soup on the side, and that's apparently a very common side, which I've never known about for this. But as I said, we're just going to stick with glutinous rice today, because we like glutinous rice. I know I talked about seitan briefly earlier as an alternative topping instead of like chicken, if you're vegan. And you can actually make this entire recipe vegan, like the way I've managed to figure it out. So instead of putting honey in the curry, just replace it with a half amount of maple syrup. And when it comes to breading, instead of using actual egg, you can use egg replacer, or you can actually make a wet dredge of corn flour and water, which kind of eliminates the flour as well. I don't know how to make this gluten-free though. That is a stretch too far for me, I'm sorry. So I'm also going to be finishing my rice, which means when it's cooked, I'm just going to pour a little bit of this mix, which I'll show you in a minute, over the top and put the lid back on to kind of just let it all mix into the rice. So we're going to be starting with a little bit of sesame oil. You don't want a lot because it's a very powerful flavour. Just a tiny little drop. Then adding a little bit of light soy sauce. And finally, tiniest little bit of rice wine vinegar. There we go. I'm actually going to add a little bit more soy sauce. And then you just want to lightly mix that. It might take a while for it to kind of fully mix because obviously it's liquid and oil. But it doesn't need to be perfect. As I said, we're going to pour this over the rice at the end and kind of mix it through quickly before we put the lid back on. So our rice is not all tipped off. As I said, we're going to leave it sitting in there with the lid still on for about 5 minutes, just so that it kind of helps get rid of all the moisture and so that it kind of fluffs up a little bit. Then we will finish it with the mix we've already made and put the lid back on for a couple of minutes. So I've dressed my rice, put the lid back on, I'm just going to leave it bubbling away. I did that off camera because it's just me pouring that mix over some rice. Following on from that, our sauce is pretty much ready to go, so I'm just going to quickly blend it. I'm using a hand blender today, it's kind of hidden behind me. You can obviously use a stand blender, I quite often use a stand blender. If you are going to use a stand blender, make sure you cover the spout. Depending on how much mix you have to the kind of size of it, you just don't want to be spraying curry sauce all over your kitchen. So I'm just going to blend that quickly. I've never used this and I'm a little bit terrified that it's kind of going to go everywhere. But we'll see, we'll see. So when you're doing it, just make sure you've got the heat off because you don't want to have the extra element of it bubbling while you're trying to blend it. So as you saw, my sauce is actually still a little bit too wet, so what we're going to do is we're literally just going to put the ring back on, leave the lid off and let it kind of boil out some of the excess moisture. It'll allow it to thicken up. If you like it runny, have it runny. If you like it thick, just let it boil a little bit longer to make sure that it's kind of as thick as you like. When plating the katsu, what I normally do is I put the rice in the bowl, I tend to push it up to one side, and then I'm going to chop my chicken and my tofu, layer that next to it, kind of in a nice little straight line. Next I'll just take a ladle or two of the curry sauce and pour it over the middle of both of them. And then to finish off, I just sprinkle with a few sesame seeds. There we go, that's how I make katsu. It's super easy, and as I said, it's one of my favourite dishes to both make and to eat. I think that's it for us, don't you else? You don't care.
He wants ball.
Yeah. Are you going to wave? No, he's not going to wave. I'll see you next time.